Hello, I'm Larry Wilson, and welcome to this segment in our study on the Jubilee Calendar. This is our last segment on this particular subject, and I hope that several things are beginning to come together for you. The Jubilee Calendar is not a simple study. God is not simple. God is infinite, and His ways are huge. And it takes some time, and it takes some effort, and it takes some endeavor to begin to grasp all that God has done. And that, of course, that will take us an eternity to do. In the meantime, God wants us to understand certain prophetic things. That's why He's given us the books of Daniel and Revelation. Many Christians say, "Oh, I don't need to know all about that. All that matters is that I'm saved." And I respond by saying, don't you want to know? Don't you love the one who saved you? Don't you, if you're going to get married to someone, don't you really want to know all about them? Don't you want to know what they are all about and what their ways are like? Sure you would. Only a foolish person would marry somebody they don't know. And as you can well see, there are a lot of foolish people in the world today. That's why the divorce rate is so bad. People are marrying people they don't know, nor do they understand them. How would you feel getting to heaven and after the first 500 years you just are dying to get out, pun intended, you want to leave. You're dying to leave. You don't like God. You don't like His ways. Well, I've got news for you. Heaven is not a democracy. Heaven is where God is king. He is the ruler. He is the one who directs the choir. And if you understand Him and you love Him, being there will be a joy. If you just got saved because He offered salvation, He offered the ticket, you get there and discover you don't like Him, you're going to be in big trouble. I want to show a few things. In the book of Daniel, we've talked about the times, and dividing of time, or half a time, in Daniel 7:25. This is when the little horn was going to persecute the saints. Let me take you to that text, Daniel 7:25, and let's put this on the computer screen for you to look at. Talking about the little horn, "He will speak against the Most High and oppress His saints, and will try to change the set times and the laws, and the saints will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time." Now, some months ago, when we were studying this particular verse, I was pointing out how that the little horn power would persecute the saints for 1260 years. And that this time period, described as a time, times, and half a time, is based on geometry. One time of the sun around the earth is 360 degrees. And the ancients, for purposes of calculation, said a year was generally 360 days. 360 degrees, one full cycle of the sun, 360 degrees, 360 days. And so a time was generally regarded as 360 days. Now, understand, they didn't use a 360-day calendar. They used a calendar that used 29 and 30 days alternating, because a lunar month is 29 and a half days in length. So some months were 29 and a half, some months were 30 days in length. So in order to generalize periods of time, a year was considered 360 days, but not actually. It was just a general statement. How far is it from here to the store? Oh, about a mile. It's a generalization. Is it 4,312 feet? I don't know. About a mile. We'll get you there. So the time, times, and half a time turns out to be 3.5 years, using the 360-day, 360-degree circular geometry, produces 1,260 years. And it's true. The little horn power did persecute the saints for 1,260 years. Now, in Daniel 12, verse 7, we find the same time period mentioned again. Notice this. The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, it will be for a time, times, and half a time. When the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed. Well, many Christians have leaped to the conclusion that since the time, times, and half a time, over in Daniel 7 is 1260 years, it has to be the same thing over here in Daniel 12:7, and that's not true. That's not true. One requires the Jubilee calendar, one does not. One is translated by the presence of the calendar, one does not. And you say, well, how do you know that, Larry? The answer to this question is kind of interesting. The Jubilee calendar ended in 1994. And I'm going to try to explain that to you. But before I do, there's a few things with the Jubilee calendar that I've got to show you first. So let me try to explain these things. If you've read the Daniel book, you will have some information about what I'm going to say, because I don't have time to fully express everything today in today's segment, this seminar segment. But we will cover this later on as we continue with our study in Daniel. Okay, first of all, let's go to this picture showing the 70th week. Now, let's do just a little bit of review so that you can see what I'm about to do here. The 70th week started in AD 27. Jesus is crucified in 30, and the 70th week ended for the Jews with the great day of Tuesday in AD 33. And this is all connected to 457 BC. Okay? You saw me draw these lines a while ago. Actually, not these particular lines, because I took a ruler and straightened these out so that you could not be so seasick watching this develop on your screen. Now, for those of you who have read my book on the book of Daniel, you know how that the 2300 days of Daniel 8:14 share the same beginning point with the 70 weeks. And the reason the 2300 days are so identified as 2300 is because they're not full weeks. 328 weeks plus 5 days. So, if you follow the fact that the 70 weeks did not end with AD 30, you know, they don't end. The 70 weeks and the count of weeks do not end with the death of Jesus. They continue onward. Then we have to understand that the 2300 days, which are also counting off time in weeks of years, in units of 7, the Jubilee calendar is intact and operating, continues all the way down to 1844, which you can see is a Thursday year. Thursday year. And the calendar then, at a minimum, has to operate, the Jubilee calendar has to operate to 1844. 1844 is the intended meaning of Daniel 8:14, indicating that in that year, Jesus would begin judging the dead and cleansing heaven's temple. Now, does the Jubilee calendar end in 1844? No. The calendar is not going to come to an end in a Thursday. A week is not complete. In fact, the great day of Sabbath is not complete. We've got to wait for the great day of Sabbath to become complete, and that happens on April 9, 1994. The Jubilee calendar ended on April 10 was beginning. That's what that intends to say there. The Jubilee calendar ended with April 9, and as April 10 was beginning in 1994. And you say, well, why did it end there? This year, remember 1993, spring to spring. So it's going to start in March, and or April, and it's going to end in April. Spring to spring. So it's actually the year 1993, showing here, is actually Julian spring of 93 to spring of 94. Jesus began cleansing the most holy place, began judging the dead in the spring of 1844, not the fall. So the point here is that the 70 Jubilee cycles ended on April 9, 1994. Now, let me show you a couple of things that will help you maybe help you understand this a little better. The time, times, and half a time which the little horn power was going to persecute the saints began in 538, which is a Sunday year. Okay? Sunday year. And the 1260 years ends in February of 1798, which happens to be, in the Jubilee calendar, the month of Adar, 1797. So that's why it shows 1797. Please understand that the 1260 years is exactly 180 weeks. Exactly 180 weeks. So the persecution of the saints began in a Sunday year, and the power, the little horn power, was broken in the sabbatical year of 1797, and the Protestants were set free. So that the Jubilee year of 1798, Protestantism was set free. Well, notice the parallel. Go back here to Daniel. In the Sabbath year of AD 33, the Jews, the probationary time ended for the Jews, and the Christian trusteeship of the gospel began. And so God gave to Christians the next 36, if you will, 36 Jubilee cycles, and then to Protestants, He has given 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what does all of this mean? It means to me that when Adam and Eve sinned, the countdown started for 6,000 years. As best I can tell, it looks to me at this time that Adam and Eve were in the garden 40 years before they sinned. 40 is an interesting number. It rained 40 days and 40 nights, when Noah was in the ark. Israel wandered around in the wilderness 40 years, a day for a year, of their investigating the land of Canaan. Jesus fasted 40 days and nights. Moses fasted 40 days and nights. I suspect that Adam and Eve were in the garden 40 years before they sinned, and this would put, possibly, if my count is right, and it's, of course, it could be wrong, Adam and Eve may have sinned in the year 3992 BC. If that is the case, let's say that is the case, just for academic purposes here, that means that the 6,000th year would be the year 2008. Now, will it be 2008? I can't say for sure. I can only say it looks that way to me at this point in time. What I'm leading up to is that I believe that the 7 angels who stand before God were given the 7 trumpets when God's patience with earth ran out. I believe they came to earth to harm the earth, but they were told to wait. And we have been in the delay since 1994 while the 144,000, until the 144,000 are sealed. Will the sealing of the 144,000 happen this year? Possibly. Possibly it will. Will the Great Tribulation begin this year? Possibly. I don't know for sure. I can't say for sure. All I can say is that it looks very interesting to me the synchrony of all of these pieces is very fascinating. The end result is that we have 6,000 years when you start with Adam and Eve sinning, 3992 BC, and the 6,000 year being 2008. Now, it is my, I guess, for lack of a better word, it's my anticipation that we are living very close to the close of Earth's history. I believe it's very close at hand. Let me show you one more thing as we continue with our study. Let me just reiterate one little point here. You can see that 538 is where the little horn power began, and the little horn power would persecute the saints for a time, times, and half a time, which is 538 through 1797, using Jubilee Calendar reckoning. So this puts the exile of the Pope in February of 1798, which in terms of Jubilee Calendar is Adar 1797. The point here that's so interesting to me is that when you began to look at the big picture, let me see if I can get this zoomed out and get a big picture for you. All right. That's all that I can get on the screen. From the beginning of sin over here, if you count off 6,000 years, and I have 6,000 boxes here, counting off every year and accounting for every year. You have the grand day of Sunday, the grand day of Monday, the grand day of Tuesday, the grand day of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sabbath. The 1,000 years of Revelation 20 are here. And so what I find is this, is that the Great Week of 3,430 years, the Great Week up here, the Great Week when it is inserted into the Grand Week, that's the blue space inside the 7,000 year calendar. We're looking at a 7,000 year calendar. When you put all of this together, you end up with only needing a short amount of time to synchronize the Great Week with the Grand Week. You've got to terminate the Jubilee calendar so that some prophetic time periods which remain to be fulfilled. And this is where the 1,335 days of Daniel 12:12 will occur. If if Jesus were to come in April, let's say, of 2008, as we begin a new year in 2008, that would put the beginning of the Great Tribulation in August of 2004 if you backed up 1,335 days. Now, I'm not saying that it's absolutely for sure going to happen that way. Not at all. I'm just saying that as I look at God's calendars and God's precision timing, and everything He does is right on time. If you go back to Exodus 12:41, when the time came for the deliverance of the children of Israel from Egypt, it happened, the Bible says, to the very day, right on time. When I look at the death of Jesus and the way that He dies between those two calendars, God's calendar and the Babylonian calendar, and the events that all go together in AD 30 to nail it down so that there's no slippage either way, God's precision is stunning. Now, I've said all along that the Jubilee calendar ends in 1994. And here are 4 reasons why I believe that to be the case. The 2,300 days of Daniel 8:14 reach down to 1844, and they require the Jubilee calendar because the 70 weeks and the 2,300 days are using the same translation which the calendar provides. So the Jubilee calendar has to operate until 1844 at a minimum. You've got to get that far with it at a minimum. Number two, the Jubilee calendar can't end on a Thursday, with a great day of 490 years essentially uncompleted. It's still 150 years short of 490. So at a minimum, the seventh great day of 490 years has to be completed, because this entire Jubilee calendar is built on a template of the weekly cycle of 7 days. We've got to complete the Jubilee calendar of 7 days. Every week has to be complete. We've seen that in the 70th week as well. Number three, if the calendar terminates in 1994 and translation is no longer necessary, now this is crucial, listen closely, then all 18 prophetic time periods in Daniel and Revelation will easily fit in their rightful places, which Rule 1 demands. In other words, when the day for a year translation ends, all Scripture, including the apocalyptic prophecies, flow together in one harmonious whole, and Rule 1 does not produce any conflict. You might remember that Rule 1 states that each prophecy has a beginning point in time, has an ending point in time, and the events must occur in the order in which they're given. Well, because some of the elements within each prophecy has some time associated with it, getting all those time periods to line up and fit in with each other is no small trick. There's got to be a scheme, there's got to be a rule, there's got to be a schematic that tells how this happens, and there is. Rule 4. Rule 4 simply says God determines how time is measured by the presence or the absence of the Jubilee calendar. This is why it has to end in 1994, at the end of 70. 70 is 7 tens. We find 7 days of 10 Jubilee cycles in the Great Week. We find 7 days of 10 centuries in the Grand Week, 7,000 years. In its entirety, this is point number 4. The Bible speaks of only 7,000 years. The 1,000 years of Revelation 20 have to be literal for the Grand Week to occur. Therefore, the Jubilee calendar has to terminate on or before the second coming. By terminating the Jubilee calendar at the end of 70 Jubilee cycles. Now, this is an interesting, a bit critical point too. Do you happen to remember why the Lord sent Nebuchadnezzar to put Israel into captivity? If you will go and look at 2 Chronicles 36:21, you'll discover that the reason was when Israel had violated 70 Sabbath years, 70 Sabbath years, then God sent Nebuchadnezzar to take them into captivity so that the land would get its rest during the 70 years that they were in Babylon. The point here is that when 70 was reached, the limits of God's patience was reached. That's the point. And I'm saying that when 70 Jubilee cycles, God gave the Israel 30, He gave the Gentiles 40, and 70 altogether, God's patience, the limits of His patience were reached in 1994. And the 4 angels who stand before God were given the 7 trumpets, and they were sent to earth to harm it. And as they were about to harm the earth, in Revelation 7:1-4, they're told to wait until the sealing of the 144,000 has occurred. That's what we're waiting on. The moment to come, the time to arrive for the sealing of the 144,000. And when it does, the 4th seal will be broken open, God's judgments will be released, Great earthquake will happen, the trumpets will begin, and the great tribulation will start. We're in a short window of delay. So by terminating the Jubilee calendar at the end of 70 Jubilee cycles, we have a perfect place to position Revelation 8:2, and that's the verse that says, "And I saw 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets." In other words, God's patience with sin has ended. And the 7 angels have been given 7 trumpets. And God's wrath is overdue. And more importantly than all of this, there's a harmony that comes from the sum of all the parts when we find the Jubilee calendar terminating in 1994. 7 full days, each day representing 10 Jubilee cycles, the great week, 3,430 years from the Exodus to 1994, April 9, all wrapped up, all stuffed inside the grand week. We're waiting now for the arrival of the 6,000th year, which could be perhaps 2008. At the outside, it could be 2015. I don't know. It just looks that way to me. Because the 5th trumpet, when Satan physically appears, claiming and masquerading as God, claiming to be God, the 5th trumpet has 5 literal months in it. We know that the 5 months of the 5th trumpet will fit very nicely and very easily and without conflict within the 1,335 days of Daniel 12:12. And this is the thing that I think is so important. Look at this verse in Daniel 12:12. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. Oh, blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the great tribulation. And then the angel told Daniel, "But as for you, go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days," which days? The 1,335 days. "You will rise to receive your allotted inheritance." Well, dear friends, if you have endured this presentation, I hope the Jubilee calendar now makes some sense to you, why it's important, how it fits together. You probably need to review this 4-segment series of March, April, May, and June. The broadcasts for these 4 months, you need to go through them 2 or 3 times until the Jubilee calendar begins to make a lot of sense to you. And in fact, get out some paper and pencil and draw your own. Put the dates down. Make it up, do all the homework, make it fit. And then you will begin to marvel too, that with God, timing is everything. May God bless you, is my prayer.